Brew Strong is brought to you by Blickman Engineering, home of the top-tier brewing stand. Visit them online at blickmanengineering.com.
Brewers, it's time for the beer radio you've been looking for. This is the show that dispels myths, tackles the toughest topics, and makes no apologies for geeking out on beer. Hosted by two guys that drink before they think, Jamil Zainashev and John Palmer. This is Brew Strong.
Greetings, cretins.
Hey, howdy, hey, my brewing brothers and sisters.
I think we got things backwards. What the heck? What's going on?
We've switched minds. We did a mind meld between shows.
Well, that's better than the time we switched underwear. That was really disturbing.
Yeah. I was swimming in those things.
Are you talking about the liquid nature of them or the size?
Your pick.
My peck? My peck? No. Oh my. No. My pick. Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it was the voluminous nature of the crotch area of my underwear.
Yeah.
It was just
that was it.
Huge. I'm telling you, like a frickin' acorn. It was huge. Well, from the acorn, the mighty oak grow. Oh God, this show's already in the crapper, and we just started.
Yeah. We'll just have to go up from here.
Yeah, that's what 3 hours of drinking will do.
I was going to say it must be the third show.
Well, and that's why we have quality sponsors like Blickman Engineering. They want a part of this demo as well. They want us representing their fine product.
Yeah, because we're a top tier show.
That's right.
Nice work, Palmer. I like that.
Nice. I'm not sure Blickman will think so. No, he will. He'll love it. Go ahead. I think we can do no wrong. He's a very kind guy. So he sponsors the show. He likes the show. He likes what we do. He loves our listeners, and I think he wants to help support things. So I'm not sure he's actually selling any more by sponsoring the show, but he certainly earned a lot of fans just off of this because he's paying for the show, so you guys don't have to if you're listening. So the very least you could do is send him an email. And I say this all the time, and people are shocked. They'll send an email and they go, "Wow, he really he responded. He seemed really pleased." It's like, yeah, most sponsors. They just want some sort of proof that somebody's listening, all right? So if you can just find it in your hearts to send somebody an email and say, it's worth my time to send you this email. It's worth, thank you for sponsoring. If I do buy something along these lines, I'm going to consider your product. That's all it takes. They just want a chance. And again, I think Blickman's just doing it out of the kindness of his heart. If he makes any money off of it, so be it. But one thing he is doing, he's paying for the Palmer, the Blickman, and me, the douche, to come out and hang with you while you brew on your own top-tier system. So the deal is, if you buy a top-tier system between now and the end of January of 2011, this is 2010, in case you're listening to the archives, and I still get people that contact me and say, hey, you talked about such and such in the show in like 2006. Like, dude, that kind of passed. So I think we need to put dates and timestamps on everything we say now. If you buy it before end of January 2011, and who knows, we may do this another year, but you're in the drawing for us to come out to your location and brew with you on your top tier system, the three of us, and it'll be a grand old time. You also have the option, if you prefer, if you're the winner, you can choose to actually come out to my house, brew on my top tier system with Palmer, Blickman, and myself. I'll even I'll do some barbecue. We'll do some bacon wrap stuff because Blickman's big into the bacon wrap stuff. Yeah. And I did bacon wrap filet mignons the other day. Just fantastic.
Yeah.
So I'll do that. We'll have some good food. We'll have some beers. We'll have fun brewing on the top tier, which is a beautiful system. And then we'll bring you down to the Brewing Network studios. You get to sit in the studios with us while Palmer and I, we do Brew Strong. And should be a good time. So if you're thinking about buying a brew system, I suggest you make it a top tier. And then you'll be just like the show. You'll be top tier.
That's right. Just like us.
Just like us. Yeah.
John took a marketing class since our last show.
I think so.
I like it.
I think it's time for you to take over mentioning the sponsors.
Yeah.
You do a much better job. I'll just sit here and drink. Look pretty. Okay. Speaking of marketing, something I got as you might know, I have a Mr. Multi pitching rate calculator. You can get it for free on MrMulti.com. But it's web-based, and you got to go to the website to use it. If you want a version that's on your iPhone or iTouch or iPad, any of those, you can go to the Apple Store. You pick one up. It's $4.99 if you want to buy it. It's exactly the same formulas and gives you exactly the same data. It works in the same way. So check it out if you care about picking that up. Go for it. Puts a few bucks in my pocket, and I certainly appreciate that. All right, so Q&A show. Every third show we do a live Q&A show. If you want to join in, you get to thebrewingnetwork.com. We actually announce this on Facebook and Twitter, either under the Brewing Network, or I also tend to do it as well on Jamal Zanishev. Mm-hmm. So friend us. Tweet us, whatever, go to the Facebook or the Twitter and help us on the internets. And you go to the Brewing Network site, click on Chat Now, and you can jump in. You can chat with the other guys that are listening, and guys and gals that are listening, and ask questions. You can also call in 888-401-BEER, and we'll take a wildly unscreened call. I'm just like living dangerous.
Living crazy here in Pacheco.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, and don't forget that at any time, so you don't have to wait for the tweet or even be thinking about it. If you've got a brew question in the middle of your brew day, just send an email to brewstrong@thebrewingnetwork.com, and it always gets through also. And we may not get to it, this episode, but we go through all of them eventually. So,
right.
We try our best.
If you have a problem that you need answered right away, just email me, Jamal@MrMulti.com or Jamal@thebrewingnetwork.com, and Palmer, John at
howtobrew.com.
Howtobrew.com. And we'll do our best to get to those quickly. We get a lot of email, so it may take a few days to get an answer, but we answer every single one. So
that's right.
And speaking of quick feedback, I actually already have a question about your iPhone app, about the Mr. Multi iPhone app. Yeah. San Diego Matt wants to know if the Mr. Multi app requires connectivity to work, or if he can use it on his iPhone Touch.
Yes, it's totally independent. No connectivity.
Perfect.
It's all local.
Okay.
So no connection needed.
So iPhone and iPhone Touch. You should make sure you announce that in your.
I said iTouch.
Oh, you did? Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Because my kids have iTouches. So.
Oh, all right, cool.
iTouch, iPad, all that stuff. It should work.
Got it. No connectivity required, Matt.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah, handy way to check your pitching race while you're standing there, looking at your stir plate and all that,
or your ball valve.
Yeah. Looking at your ball valve, wondering why it hurts so much when you open it.
Yeah, and in case you're wondering about a iPhone version of the water chemistry calculator, Jamil and I really haven't gotten around to that yet, but we've talked about it.
Yeah, you're right. I feel so bad. All right, so that's the next one that he's going to do.
Now we're going to field questions about that for months.
All right, no, Palmer, definitely I'll tell Noah that's the one to do next, okay? Because I've got like a half a dozen really great apps that nobody else has done. I mean, nobody was doing pitching rates.
Yeah.
Excuse me, for a few minutes of ranting here.
Is anybody else now?
I'll start the timer. Nobody was doing pitching rates until I came out with pitching rate calculator. Now people do pitching rates because it's pretty straightforward math, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody does starter growth curves because nobody has the data. And nobody's willing to put the months and months of labor into coming up with the appropriate data and mathematical expressions to make this happen. So that's really the only one that does it. But until I came up with that one, nobody had pitch and rate calculation. Now I got some other apps, just going to blow you away. Stuff that I've thought of that nobody else has anything like it. Nobody's considered, but it'll be a great tool. Just a few yeast-related things that nobody knows about.
All right.
My little brain. If I get hit by a bus, the world is lost out.
It's going to die with you. Maybe you ought to give me all of your ideas, Jamil, because you know that I'll take care of the family for you.
That's true.
When you get hit by a bus.
We do have that deal. If I go down, you're doing the sympathetic fundraiser to try and.
Now I didn't say I wouldn't be the one driving the bus.
10% goes to my family, right?
Yes, 10%. I'll take care of your family, but I might be also the one driving the bus once all the ideas come through.
Yeah, you're waiting for me to have some horrible disease that'll take me out. Just after you've raised the money
Pneumonia
to treat the disease, then I die. It's too late to spend the money on that. So, well, all right. The show's already gone on the crapper.
No, we haven't flushed it yet.
Flushed it. So the turd's circling the bowl, and now. All right. Well, so let's get on to the questions.
All right.
Let's do one at least.
Let's do it. Hey, Brew Strongers, writes in Eric from Connecticut. I just brewed a Scottish Wee Heavy using a Northern Brewer kit, extract with specialty grains. And the included directions called for conditioning the beer for 2 months in a secondary fermenter. I've not used secondary for quite a while now and have never used one for that amount of time. Also, this is the biggest beer I've ever brewed. So my question, will there be enough yeast left in the brew after 2 months to carbonate the beer when I bottle it?
Chances are there's technically probably still a few cells. And if you were to wait long enough at warm enough temperatures, it may, and you use simple sugar, it would eventually carbonate. Mm-hmm. However, it's better to go ahead at 2 months. Most of the yeast has settled out. You're going to want to repitch about 1 billion cells per liter of beer. So for a 5-gallon batch, it's about 19 liters. You would use about a fifth of a White Labs tube, or half of a white yeast propagator pack, or about a gram of dry yeast to make that happen. So, you just don't want to put a ton of yeast in there and have a bunch of yeast die and barf up in your beer. So just enough to do your carbonation.
Okay. I may have a caller on here. The phone's acting funny. Let's see what we got. Caller, you're on with Brew Strong.
Hey, is this me?
Yes, sir.
Me. Good to hear you.
Who are we talking to?
This is Bertat there.
Oh, Bertat. What's happening?
How you doing, buddy?
Brother.
Hey, I just got to say, Mr. Malty should change his name to Mr. Yeasty. The book is great.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, I think, I registered Mr. Malty, and then one of these domain parking places, they grabbed Mr. Hoppy, and it's parked. It's like Brew Strong, and somebody follows the show.
And then picks them all up.
And then just registers all of them, and then just waits and tries to charge us money for them.
Well, plus Mr. Yeasty is just disgusting. I don't like it.
Well, yeah. That's why he fits Jamil so well.
Yeah, that's true.
That's right.
You got a question, Tat?
Anyway, yeah, I got a question. What's your opinion on using hops in a bag in the boil? I know that Tasty uses a hop bag,
right?
And the last couple of brews I've started to use one. But do you lose any percentage of your alpha acids, or do you adjust any, or what? What's your opinion?
Well, and you know, you're an experienced brewer, and the popular opinion is, it's 10% loss when you go in a bag, and it's you're going to lose some bittering. I think that the thing is, there's some restriction of flow of wort through the bag, and that's going to slow down isomerization because, the more concentrated it is, the less, isomerization you get. And the other problem being, if you pack the bag full, what Tasty does is he has a very large sack. Tasty's sacks are very large. And
I got a large sack too.
Oh, well, there you go. I'm not surprised. You're the kind of guy I would expect to have very large sacks.
Everybody.
And if you don't put a whole lot of hops in there, I think that really mitigates the whole percentage loss thing. I think you'd be pretty good. I mean, maybe you're losing a few IBUs, but I don't think it's going to be that much. If you tightly pack your sack, and I think that then there you're going to lose maybe the 10% or maybe even more. What would you say, John?
Okay. Yeah, that's the key. I mean, the whole isomerization process, you've got a lot more alpha acid going into the beer, into the wort during the boil, and it's being isomerized at a slow rate. So where you run into isomerization loss from the use of a hop bag is, one, if it's a really large bag and collects a lot of alpha, sticking to the fibers, that's, if you think about it, that's going to be a small effect. I mean, it's not going to stick that much compared to the kettle and the hop break and everything else. So what the next factor is that if the hops are packed too tightly in the bag and you can't get good wort flow past the hops to leach out the alpha acids and get that alpha into the boil, into solution where it can isomerize. So yeah, as Jamil said, and Tasty's experience, if you have a large enough bag where you get good wort flow through that bag, you're really not going to see a loss in utilization.
Well, I wonder if, John, what do you think? If you were to kind of more teabag it, where you lift it out and let the wort drain out and then drop it back in, maybe that would even increase.
Yeah, that would help.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and Tat,
right,
I got a question for you, brother. How would you compare walleye and yellow perch? Would you say they're the same or different?
Well, I mean, your walleye is like it's a different perch. It's a bigger perch.
Yeah, right. It's big, long, skinny perch. Yeah,
big perch. Yeah. But good, very good.
It's good. They're good. Yeah. Well, there are some people who would say that yellow perch is no walleye.
Yellow perch. That's right. Yellow perch.
Right.
Forgot about the yellow. Yeah.
They're a little smaller, a little sweeter. At least my position on it.
So,
Ted,
a big loose bag is good.
Yes. Big loose sack.
Big and loose is good. Tight is not good.
Yeah.
Right.
That's like the only time that ever applies.
Yes, that's right.
No, Ted took us out at the conference. He took Palmer and I and a couple other folks out to
Jensen's Supper Club.
Jensen's Supper Club for dinner because Palmer needed to have walleye. So then Palmer's like, we're all giving him crap about walleye. He goes, well, it's a lot like yellow perch. And some diner in the restaurant heard him, and only in Minnesota. She's like standing up and going, like, oh no, what the hell? You can't compare yellow perch and walleye.
She came and corrected you.
Yeah, she's like, well, we're idiots. Who are these idiots?
Was she angry too?
No, she was laughing, but she goes, he's full of it. It's nothing like yellow perch.
I see. Beautiful. Thanks, Tat.
Palmer's sticking to his yellow perch analogy, though. Thanks, brother.
Back to my boil.
Thank you.
See ya.
All right, Brew Tattoo. You can call us up 888-401-BEER if you have questions. That's 888-401-2337. You want to do another one before the break?
No, let's take a break.
Okay.
The cutting-edge equipment from Blickman Engineering is designed by brewers to make your brew day shorter, more enjoyable, and to give you a sense of pride in your equipment. At Blickman, they know what makes brewing a pain and build gear that makes it fun. Like the intuitive beer gun, a completely different approach to filling bottles. The Therminator Wort Chiller, a new take on a plate chiller that's sized for flow, performance, and the high groundwater temps homebrewers face every day. The Brewmometer, a brilliant weldless thermometer design with brewing parameters right on the dial. The Auto Sparge, ultimate simplicity for preventing an overflow or running your mash tun dry. And much more, like the modular top-tier brewing stand, conical fermenters, and their Boilermaker brew pots. With more cutting-edge equipment coming soon, keep up with the latest from Blickman at BlickmanEngineering.com and stay on the cutting edge.
Williams Brewing is your online resource for prompt delivery of quality home brewing supplies. Since 1979, Williams Brewing has offered the finest equipment and freshest ingredients and the best customer service in the business. Cut hours off your brewing sessions by using one of our 11 varieties of famous Williams malt extract. Our Williams Belgian Pale Extract is mashed with pure Belgian two-row malt and a small percentage of Belgian wheat malt for an authentic Belgian character you just can't get from other extracts. Or check out our unique fermenters, 2.5-gallon kegs, paintball tank-based draft beer equipment, bottling aids, and much more. We even have our own line of precision hydrometers. Go to WilliamsBrewing.com to browse our vast selection. That's WilliamsBrewing.com. Orders placed by 3:30 p.m. Pacific Time ship the same day. Brewing is easy. The Williams way.
Hey, what are you doing, man?
Writing a review of WLP 400.
What? You're reviewing yeast?
Yeah. White Labs has home brewer reviews of all their strains. Are you new to these interwebs? Check it out.
That's awesome.
White Labs, your source for great yeast, invites all brewers to visit whitelabs.com to read and write your own reviews of all their yeast strains. Get real-world tips and tricks from other brewers who have made the most of their vials and post your own experiences. It's another way White Labs brings you closer to the best yeast on the planet.
And send. There you go.
You misspelled flocculate, dude.
What? Mother...
White Labs. It's all in the vial.
Organic ingredients. Fresh, clean, good for you, good for the planet. Seven Bridges has the best selection of organic ingredients, including over 27 varieties of organic hops at breworganic.com. Join their mailing list for special deals and regular updates. They've been brewing organic and serving organic brewers for 13 years. They can help you brew great organic beer. And Seven Bridges is the proud host of the 4th Annual National Organic Brewing Challenge, the only BJCP-sanctioned nationwide brewing competition just for organic beers. Take the challenge this fall for a chance to win great prizes, including stainless steel brew kettles and organic brewing ingredients. This year, the challenge will be judged in 2 locations: on the East Coast at Capital City Brewing in Arlington, Virginia, and on the West Coast at Gordon Biersch in San Jose, California. For complete details, visit breworganic.com/competition. Seven Bridges is cooperatively owned in awesome Santa Cruz, California. Everyone there is dedicated to great beer and people-friendly business practices. They offer environmentally friendly, fair trade, and fair wage brewing products whenever possible. Seven Bridges, breworganic.com.
This is www.thebrewingnetwork.com.
Sit down next to it, grab yourself a paper towel, and watch those yeast have sex.
You're listening to the Brewing Network.
Back to the two guys that know how to turn beer into beer. This is Brew Strong.
All right, we're back. It's a live Q&A session here with John Palmer, Jamil Zanishev, your Brew Strong hosts. What's our next question from the chat, Justin?
Well, after those smooth stylings of Jay-Z, let's go back to the phones. Caller, you're on Brew Strong. Who are we talking to?
Hey, this is Alonzo.
Hey, Alonzo. What's going on?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Great. Got a question?
Good. Hey, I called last time as well, if you remember. I asked about fermenting a beer only at high temperatures. I don't know if you...
Right.
Yeah, I've since sucked it up and just got a fridge.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, and your excuse, well, my wife isn't going to like me having another fridge. And
But thanks to the question that I asked, I am now able to fully utilize my fridge. I just keep the beer in there for a few days, and then I take it out, and then I put the next one in. And, I have a nice constant supply going into the fridge, and it's good to go.
Nice.
Yeah. So I also wanted to thank Justin for getting the book out to me. I'm all the way on the East Coast. I am in Burlington, Vermont, and he's still got the yeast book to me before Amazon is even shipping it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm quite impressed.
Like I said,
we try.
Yeah.
You get that book before anybody else.
Yeah, I also got my B&A 4 shirt that you still have in stock. Thank you.
Perfect. We'll be selling those at B&A 10. Don't you worry.
Right. It makes a great chamois for cleaning the car, does it not?
Yeah. All right. What's your question?
So all right. The real question is, it's common practice to not bottom crop a high gravity ale like a barley wine or a double imperial IPA. But what about top cropping a high gravity beer like that? Is that something that is a better idea than bottom cropping?
Well, you can bottom or top crop those beers. Either way, it's just that the high level of alcohol once the the beer's fully fermented and the yeast is dropped to the bottom, alcohol levels are very high, the IBU levels are very high. Both those things really impact viability of the yeast. Totally decimating the ability of the yeast to reproduce. So, if you're going to top or bottom crop, I would, go with top cropping, because at that point, the yeast are healthier, the alcohol level is much lower. IBUs, in an IBU situation, it's still, pretty high. But that would be the better choice. So you can still do it either way, but if I was to choose one, definitely top cropping.
So it sounds like you're saying that it's still not a great idea, but it can be done, but it's still better to wait on those high IBU or high gravity beers until you're maybe towards, I guess, with top cropping, you're able to do more batches. So maybe when you're kind of getting sick of that yeast and you're on maybe your dozenth batch with that yeast, and so you kind of want to wait till the end with that.
Yeah, on the interesting thing is, I think if you're starting with a really healthy yeast and you top crop and then you give the yeast good conditions to, grow in the next batch, I bet you're just far better off than most brewers out there. True. And you're going to make a fine beer, and you're going to be, making some of the best beer possible at that point. Yeah, you could do better, but people are making such, poorly fermented beer that I think you'd be pretty satisfied. Ideally, you want to start up with a fresh pitch.
Yeah. Now, Jamil, going over to Can You Brew It shows for a second with this idea in mind. I mean, have you gotten feedback from some of those professional brewers that brew strong beers? Are they repitching those yeasts, or are they not? I mean, are they doing the repitching from smaller beers and then brewing the big beer and then done with that yeast and go on to a new batch? Have they mentioned?
Well, it depends on what they're brewing. So, if the beer is a regular in their lineup and they're brewing it, week in, week out, then they stick with the same yeast and they don't really see a whole lot of problems. If the beer is like a special one-off, some giant barley wine or something like that, then a lot of them tend to call that the end and toss that and start afresh.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
So, but if they're making a barley wine every week, then they tend to just repitch.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and I think it makes sense in a lot of ways. The yeast, they don't really totally, genetically change. They do seem to sort of become accustomed in a way. And the interesting way they become accustomed is the ones that are weak and can't handle the environment, they die off. And the ones that are still viable, they're the ones that really can handle a little bit better. So they tend to, to do,
just like brain cells. Yeah.
Right, exactly. It's the whole buffalo herd thing.
Yeah.
And your brain cells.
All right, thank you for the call, Alonzo. Appreciate it. 888-401-BEER. All right, next question came through from Glenn. Jamil and John, there's been a lot of talk recently about Whirlpool editions. What I don't get is the best method for whirlpooling if you don't have a Jamil-style Whirlpool immersion chiller. I brew all grain, use an immersion chiller, and then siphon from the brew kettle into the fermenter. So could you explain a good procedure for Whirlpool hop editions?
Get yourself a Jamil-style Whirlpool chiller.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, John.
Oh, I was just saying, what we're basically talking about is, the boil has been turned off. The heat's been turned off. The wort is still hot, and you're adding hops, at knockout with the heat off. The term whirlpool hop additions comes from the professional brewer that is, adding hops in the whirlpool, and it takes time. I don't know, 20 minutes or something for them to whirlpool their entire 10-barrel batch or whatever the case may be. And so what they have is they have fresh hops in contact with hot wort for a period of time as the wort moves through the whirlpool. And Jamil's whirlpool chiller, the time cuts down to what? Probably 10 minutes or so in the hot, from knockout till the time the wort is cool. I did knockout hop additions with my immersion chiller. I do knockout hop additions with my Therminator, my plate chiller. So it's heat off, fresh hops into the kettle, hot wort, and as that wort chills, you're adding fresh hop oil and a little fresh infusion of alpha, and retaining more of the essential oils into the beer.
Right. So I guess his question was, how do I do that if I don't have, the ability to pump for the whirlpool? And commercial brewers, they have a pump and a whirlpool inlet, and they'll have even a separate whirlpool, and they will use that to do their whirlpooling. A lot of homebrewers, they'll turn to, I'll take a spoon and I'll stir the daylights out of it, and that's how I'll whirlpool. Or they'll get a paddle mixer and they'll fire that up and whirlpool that way. That's fine as long as the wort is nice and hot. But once it starts to cool down, you really don't want to be exposing it by taking the lid off the kettle or sticking something in there. There are bacteria and wild yeast floating all over the place. All that dust, and you don't always see the dust, but it's there, and it's all dropping into your wort once you remove that lid. So, unless it's hot enough to kill that stuff, don't be doing that. But the way that people are doing it, that I know of, the moment you turn off the flame, have the spoon in there to sanitize while it's boiling for the last few minutes. Then turn off the flame and immediately stir the frickin' daylights out of this thing. Get a good whirlpool going. Pull the spoon out, put the lid back on, and let that be your whirlpool. It won't be long enough to really do the full whirlpool effect, but it's something.
Yeah, it's mainly time at temperature. We're not at a boil. You're not boiling off the highly volatile oils, so they're staying in solution. And then you're chilling that wort down, so they're staying in. They're not going away. You can do a whirlpool addition that way. You can use a hop back. You can just throw them in, turn off the heat, throw them in, let it sit for a few minutes, and then start your immersion chiller. But I think the central idea is that you're trying to retain these highly volatile oils and aromas in the wort without boiling them off.
All right. Got a lot of questions to get through, guys. Okay. Phil Brazil wrote in this time, and his is kind of loaded, even though I said that. So
he's loaded, so are we.
He's loaded, and you're loaded, and this question's loaded. He's got questions about step mash versus infusion. All right. Let me give you the whole rundown here. First of all, what are the advantages and disadvantages of doing one over the other? Also, are there styles that benefit more than others? When I ask people about step mash versus infusion, they usually tell me that malts today are more modified than some time ago, so you don't need to do it. But what do they mean by that? What is modification, and why is it important?
All right, so we did a whole show on the mash. And but short of repeating all of that, Palmer, why don't you? You're the
modification guru.
Do it,
I suppose. Okay. Well,
go for it.
Conversion. You're trying to when you the point of the mash is to take the starches, get them soluble, and then convert those starches into sugars. Malt modification refers to how accessible the starches in the malt are to the enzymes. A highly modified malt has gone through enzymatic breakdown of the kernel, the endosperm, and so those starches are accessible. A less modified malt hasn't gone through as much enzymatic breakdown. The starches are still kind of bound up in the protein carbohydrate matrix of the endosperm, and they're not as water soluble. It takes longer to get them into solution so that the enzymes can work on them. It's for conversion. So what you do is you start out by at lower temperatures to utilize different enzymes. You can use protein rests, beta amylase rests on up to alpha amylase rests. And by doing different temperature rests in a step mash, you allow different enzymes to work on the malts and make the starches more accessible. It's not as necessary in today's highly modified malt. You can do a single infusion temperature mash and a single temperature infusion mash, and the starches are readily available, and it converts, and you're off and running. As far as the style question, here's where I'll turn it back over to JZ. In a recipe, you'll often be looking at trying to brew a classic example of a style, where you maybe go to the traditional malt for that style. And Jamil, why don't you elaborate from here in terms of what styles step mashing is?
Well, I think it depends a lot on if you're trying to do something like a Heffa and you want those clove flavors and things like that, and you want to do like a ferulic acid rest, and I think there are times when it helps. Charlie Papazian says that he's step mash, does protein rest on every beer that he does, and I think there could be something to that, or not. Hard to say for sure. And certain recipes, if you're doing using things like flaked barley or flaked rye or something like that, then maybe you want to do a step mash. Generally, I'm very lazy, and so the value I was seeing from doing these multi-step mashes was returning very, very little. Same thing for decoction. I was like, it's just not worth it. That's why I've shifted, almost entirely to single infusion. So, style-wise, I think you can skip it on everything, but you can certainly do it on everything as well, if that's what you prefer.
Yeah.
All right. Next question came through from Nico Brew. He wants some pointers on adding sucrose to a beer to boost the gravity without boosting body. Mm-hmm. Specifically, how much and when can I add it to the boil without stressing the yeast? And then how often throughout the ferment, etc. So he wants the whole...
Right. So the interesting thing is, this is how beers like, for example, the brewery down in Southern California, they're making a really interesting beer, Black Tuesday. Huge alcohol in this thing. And they're doing that, I believe, by doing some, later additions during the fermenter, into the fermenter during fermentation, similar to how Dogfish does their 120. We did a Can You Brew It show on Dogfish 120. Sean Paxton came in, and we talked about the sugar additions later on. That is, advantageous because here's what happens. Yeast, when you start fermentation, the very first thing they're going to consume is like all the glucose, and then they go with all the other simpler sugars as well. They break those down into glucose, and then they consume them. The next thing that they do is maltose, and maltose. So if you have a lot of very simple sugars that you've loaded up the beer to, add alcohol without adding a lot of excessive body. They're going to eat all those first, and they may not consume the maltose, and you're going to end up with an under-attenuated, heavy, sweet beer. So the trick is you don't add any sugars in the boil. You let the yeast ferment out the minimal glucose that's there as a percentage from your mash, and then they end up consuming the maltose. And when they seem like they're finishing up with the maltose, then you go ahead and give them more simple sugars. And they will consume those, and they'll move on. And then you add more, and you add more, and you add more. Keeping the yeast going, temperature, and more simple sugar additions. And they'll keep consuming until they get poisoned by the alcohol. So that's how you do it. Simple sugars will not add anything to the body, but if they don't ferment out fully, they'll add quite a bit of sweetness. You want to make sure that you're very careful that all those simple sugars you add ferment out completely. Otherwise, you end up with a really sweet beer. Those simple sugars are exceedingly sweet, and they will add a lot of sweetness. So you need to be careful that you don't add more after the yeast have already reached their limit, because you're just going to add a whole bunch of sweetness. So you need to be careful of that.
All right. Why don't we take a break before we go to the next questions?
Okay, if you insist.
I do.
It's beer time anyways. I thought one beer would carry me through the show, but now I'm getting like 10. All right. We'll be back after this.
When I order a beer, I want my server to know more about it than I do. I want someone who enjoys good beer and loves helping others enjoy it too. I want someone who knows how to pour a perfect pint for every beer style. I want a Cicerone.
The Cicerone Certification Program is creating the type of people who help you enjoy great beer. Home brewers and craft beer lovers know beer is more flavorful and complex than ever, and it takes some serious knowledge to store and serve beer right. Cicerones know beer. There are 3 levels in the Cicerone program: Certified Beer Server, Certified Cicerone, and Master Cicerone. Cicerones are truly the sommeliers of beer. The best beer locations have a Certified Cicerone on staff. Relaxed and unpretentious. Cicerones are tested on storing and serving beer, beer styles, flavor and tasting, the brewing process and ingredients, and pairing food with beer. Learn more about your next beer guide at Cicerone.org. Certified Cicerone, because it takes top talent to present a perfect pint.
Hi, this is Push from the Brewing Network, and I want to tell you about the Brewmaster's Warehouse and how you can get 10% off your next order. I'm a pretty techie guy, but I've never seen an online store like this. It's awesome. Go to brewmasterswarehouse.com and click on Brew Builder. You can whip up a custom recipe so easily even Sven could do it. Seriously, it's slick. You can share your recipe with your own logo and notes to the Brewmasters database if you want. And the best part, it keeps a running tally of the beer you're building while you're doing it. Then, bam, click Buy Recipe, and your cart is filled and ready to go with helpful suggestions in case you forgot something. This thing is amazing. Brewmasters Warehouse is run the way a home brewer would do it, with great service, fast turnaround, and $6.99 flat rate shipping. Brewmaster's Warehouse and the Brew Builder blew me away. Check it out today at brewmasterswarehouse.com. I'm serious. And don't forget to put B in Army in the discount code box for 10% off your order. Check out brewmasterswarehouse.com. Cheers.
Do you support the Brewing Network? Do you brew your own? Are you looking for an economical, fun, and legal way to do both? Subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine and do just that. All year long, Brew Your Own will surprise you, entertain you, and educate you with articles on beer and brewing from authors like the Brewing Network's very own Jamel Zalashev and John Palmer. Each issue is a full pint of brewing techniques, homebrew stories, tips and photos, projects to make yourself, and recipes for the avid home brewer. Get your tough questions answered by Mr. Wizard and polish your style accuracy with Jamel. A portion of every subscription goes to the Brewing Network, so subscribe today at byo.com/Brewing Network, or just click the BYO logo on the Brewing Network homepage and support a fantastic hobby and your favorite broadcaster. Brew Your Own, the how-to homebrew beer magazine.
My name is Olin Schultz, and I'm president of More Beer.
This month, More Beer wants you to meet the man behind the brand.
I founded More Beer 15 years ago.
Olin started brewing before the release of both Windows 3.1 and Bill Clinton.
I've been homebrewing for 18 years.
What makes starting the biggest brand in homebrewing great?
My favorite thing about working at More Beer is the great energy of the staff. Everyone loves to talk about beer.
Olin has put some of his favorite items on sale this month, just for you.
My favorite things to brew with right now at More Beer are the new breathable silicone carboy hood.
An easy way to seal your carboy without a lot of head pressure on your yeast.
My malty brown ale kit, our stainless steel quick disconnects, our line of heavy-duty kettles, and, of course, the B3500 brew sculpture.
The best gravity-fed brew sculpture with a footprint of just 2 by 3 feet. It can fit almost anywhere. Don't miss Olin's favorites this month only, and only at More Beer.
You're listening to the Brewing Network.
Back to the beer guys that make other beer guys look like wine guys. Brew strong.
All right, live Q&A. You can always go to the brewingnetwork.com. There's lots of great stuff there. There's an excellent forum with a lot of like-minded souls. You can check that out. But there's this live chat now button. Click on that thing, get into the chat. You just no password or anything. You just enter your name and join in. You can ask questions live during the show, or you can even call in 888-401-BEER and ask questions during the show. All right, what's our next one up?
All right, I like mine is in the chat room.
All right.
That's the other fun part about joining the chat. You have to figure out people's names. Okay, one thing I've never been clear on, this is a good one for you here, Palmer, is mashing in terms of how enzymes denature. So if you strike at 155 F, for example, and over the first half hour, or maybe less, allow your temp to fall into the beta amylase range, 131 to 150, could you expect to get a nice fermentable to non-fermentables balance?
Yes. The enzymes denature in a half-life sort of situation. The hotter you go, the faster they denature. So if you dough in at 155 and then start letting it fall, beta is going to be really active at 155, but it's also going to be denaturing. As the temperature cools, the denaturing rate will drop, and so you'll be able to actually prolong the beta amylase activity. So you should end up with a very fermentable wort with that kind of schedule.
Well, and one thing to add in, all right, so let's say you dough'd in at 149. The amount of time it's going to take to fully convert, those available starches and using those enzymes, that's going to be slightly shorter than if you dough'd in at a higher temperature and let the temperature drop, because you've already denatured some of those enzymes. So you may need to extend that portion of your rest, your colder rest, to ensure you get full conversion at that temperature. So it can take a little longer, but it definitely will. There's pockets that there's in the grain. There's different areas where the enzymes survive, and like John's saying, it's a half-life of the unfolding of the proteins that comprise those enzymes.
Yep.
I chastised Palmer at the break to keep things short, so now he's yep. All right, very good, Palmer. You're doing a good job.
Oh, yeah.
Limit yourself to one-word answers, please.
Yeah. All right, here's one from Mills. I used WLP 007 for the first time, and it ferments crazy fast and clears so well. If diacetyl is left by this strain, can it be reduced while it is fully flocked with a temperature raise and rousing the yeast? Mr. Yeast?
Mr. Yeasty. Yes and no. It's going to take a while. It's one of the reasons that, I'm assuming, I don't really know, so legally I can't be sued, but I'm assuming, my assumption is, and like Budweiser, they use those beechwood chips. They're all fuzzy with little nubs of wood sticking out. gives you a lot more surface area, and that enhances the reduction of all these byproducts at the end of fermentation, right? That's one of the reasons they use it. In a large, shallow fermenter, like a Carboy has a large, shallow, broad base, so you do tend to still get some pretty good reduction in something like that. If you're doing something like a corny keg and the yeast is stacked up and it's a smaller surface area, you can have a harder time reducing compounds like diacetyl and acetaldehyde in something like a Carboy or in a corny keg. So the more surface area, the easier it is. Rousing, that'll help. The ideal thing is, when you see the yeast start to slow down during that fermentation, that 3-day fermentation, it's a great yeast. When you see it start to slow down, raise the temperature a couple of degrees. Go ahead and kick the temperature up 2, 3, 5 degrees Fahrenheit, and your reduction of those compounds will happen during that time. So you won't really need to worry about it. You'll end up with a nice, clean beer and no problems.
All right. Bike Foolery wrote in, okay, so I moved to a new estate where the municipal water is terrible. I now have 9 gallons of oatmeal stout that finished at 1020. OG was 1058. But the mineral content makes it seem super dry. Any ideas? He says, I tried to take a few samples and mix in lactose, but the lactose would not mix into solution very well. Outside of brewing more stout and blending, anything I can do to this beer?
Throw it away. Yeah, never blend good beer with bad beer. It just makes, at best, mediocre beer and tends to make just a lot more bad beer.
Okay. He says he's oaking some of it, and it seems to hide some of the mineral character. What do you think of that?
Don't give me any to drink.
Does he? I mean, what is his water that's so bad? I mean,
well, he's not really saying. He did say that he used 5.2 in the mash, but he's not specific about it. He says that just municipal water is terrible. Is his whole explanation? So,
I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, I don't know. From a water standpoint, if I don't know what the water is, I can't really suggest anything. If we go back to, he's got this batch of beer that, how does he describe the flavor right now? It's too dry, he says?
Yeah, that it came out, it's super dry. He says the mineral content makes it seem super dry.
What was the finishing gravity?
1020. 1020. From 1058.
Wow, which is amazing, yeah.
I think it's probably tannic.
Right, but why would it? Well, it could have been tannic because the pH of the mash,
and if it
really
if
high
it's
pH,
so maybe let it sit for several months.
5.2 though.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, let it sit. Put in a keg, set it in the fridge, leave it for a year, come back and try it again. But and call us in a year and let us know how it worked out.
Yeah, cold condition for a couple months and try it again. I bet it'll be better.
Okay.
I think that might, it can't hurt.
Yeah.
Right? That's very spastestical of you.
Good.
To quote Justin.
All right. That bitch Kim is in the chat room.
Oh, Kim Wood.
She says, I've done a couple of Citra IPAs recently. 13.4 AAUs. And it seems that there's a strange flavor that fades after about 4 weeks. Before the beer is really nice. This has happened when I've bittered with Magnum and with Columbus. I've heard people refer to hop esters producing a temporary result like this. Is this what's going on here? Is it just related to this hop? And if so, should I be adjusting the IBUs in the recipe to compensate for a little bit of aging so that I don't lose some of the desired hop character?
See, the darn thing about Kim is she's actually so sharp and brews such great beer that the questions become very complex.
Yeah.
And Palmer and I go like, Jesus, I don't know. That's an excellent question.
And she's in the chat. She could maybe clarify. I mean, do we need to know what this strange flavor is?
Right. That would help. But tasting the beer, Kim, you need to send us plenty of your beer. Couple of 5-gallon kegs would work.
Yeah. One for each of us, that would help us compare them.
Right.
I mean, I've noticed that plastic flavor in hoppy beers that fades after a couple of weeks.
Right. So yeah, you can get that. You can get a smoky. You can get a plastic phenol. You can get all sorts of weird flavors. Well,
she says it's phenolic-ish.
Yeah. When I was in New Zealand, and they had the Riwaka hops, and it was like burnt rubber.
Yeah.
It was like a big mouthful of burnt rubber. It was horrible.
I've had that.
The beer was awesome, and I'm thinking, what's this burnt rubber character? And I'm thinking, oh, it's bad fermentation. It's all this. They go, no, that's the hops. I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. Right. And sure enough, after they sit for like 2 weeks, it goes away. So definitely, but I think if you were to change, your bittering or the character of what you're doing, that it's going to change so many other things. I think the only thing is just to wait and let it settle out and let it change. Unless the character you're looking for, you could get with different hops. Then there's another way to do it. But if you like the result,
so she shouldn't adjust her IBUs up because she has to wait.
Well,
that's what she
right.
wants to know. Should she adjust up? Right. Because she has to wait for this plastic to. She does say it's plastic, right? To wait for it to go away.
Well, you're gonna, if there was, at that point where the plastic goes away. Is the beer sweet and needs more IBUs? Then yes, bump it up. I would maybe use some other Horizon or something like that to bump up your IBUs to make that happen. You can change your pitching rate. That'll also affect your final IBUs. If you're pitching a lot, then that can really be trimming down your final beer IBUs. Yeah. The other thing is if the resulting beer, without tasting it, it's really hard to say. When you let a beer sit for a while, if it's sitting warm or it's getting some oxygen, you actually can pick up a weird sweetness. That's the malt kind of oxidizing, and you get these weird kind of sweet flavors no matter how much bittering is still there. So I'm not sure if that's probably the problem. Now, Kim's a really good brewer, so maybe that's not the problem, but that's one thing to keep in mind. Okay.
All right, let's do one more before the break. Moby writes in a question for you, Jay-Z. In the yeast book, he's already reading through it. He says, in the yeast book, he recommends for repitching to only repitch lagers 3 to 4 times. But you can repitch ales 8 to 9 times.
Really? I don't remember saying that. Yeah. What page?
Yeah, I don't know if Moby's still in there. So he says lagers 3 to 4 times, repitch ales 8 to 9 times. Why the big difference in the number of repitches? Is there a difference in the number of repitches between, even if those numbers aren't right? Between ales and lagers?
That might be something that commercial brewers do, or Whitey, came across in his experience. Generally, the yeast companies, they'll tell you that the lager yeast really are not as stable and don't store as well and really have problems over a certain number of generations, fewer generations than the ale yeast. The ale yeast seems to be more stable, and you can repitch and do more things with the ale yeast. So that might be part of it. And yeah, geez, hard to say. But all the yeast tend to be, very genetically stable. So you should be able to repitch, more than enough times. One of the things that happens with lager yeasts, very common, is people will, rack to secondary. This is one of the reasons I hate secondary. They will go ahead and rack to a secondary vessel, and they'll harvest their yeast off that secondary vessel. That's the yeast that they'll repitch. Well, if you're repitching the stuff that doesn't flocculate very well, then all of a sudden you end up with yeast that doesn't flocculate at all, and you end up with a dusty, murky beer. Now, JP has he's pulled up his personalized copy.
You found it in there?
He found in here.
And while Jay-Z's reading
162, bottom paragraph.
While Jay-Z's reading that to see where we're at, I foresee this happening over the next few months. The same thing happened with Brewing Classic Styles. So we love to answer questions about the books, but please do write in with page numbers and things like that so Jay-Z can not say, I never said that. This also is obviously written by two different authors, and so that'll make it a bit confusing.
So, I went through every word of this book, though.
Yeah.
So, Chris was saying that, so how many times can a brewer reuse a pitch of yeast? Thank you, JP, for finding this. Yeah,
nice work.
Good work. I mean, out of this big-ass freaking book, he found this right away. The life of a yeast culture depends in part on brewing conditions and the strain involved. For instance, a brewer using today's fermenters can generally reuse ale strains 8 to 10 times, while lagers go 3 to 4 generations. Tall stainless steel tanks with conical bottoms make it easy to collect yeast, but they put pressure on the yeast, reducing the number of reuses these days. Even though we do not use yeast for hundreds of generations because of modern equipment, we still want to get the best beer possible by reusing the yeast. Yeah, so here they're talking about the hydrostatic pressure of the tall cylinder conicals on the yeast. And again, lager yeast, in the homebrew setting, what we tend to find is lager yeast actually pretty durable and do fairly well on repitching later on. The yeast that don't do well is the wheat yeasts. And when I mentioned that to Whitey, he was like, I don't know. In the commercial environment, with those giant fermenters, lager yeast just don't tend to do that well. So I think that's really what's at the key to this. If you're a home brewer, I think you're, as long as you're keeping things clean and in good shape, I think you're fine.
All right, sounds good. Let's do a quick break.
Yes, let's do a break right now. Back after this.
When you hear Blickman Engineering, think innovation, passion, quality, and customer service. Blickman gear is designed by brewers to give you a sense of pride in your equipment. At Blickman, they know what makes brewing a pain and build gear that makes it fun. Like the intuitive beer gun, a completely different approach to filling bottles. The Therminator Wort Chiller, a new take on a plate chiller that's sized for flow, performance, and the high groundwater temps homebrewers face every day. The Brewmometer, a brilliant weldless thermometer design with brewing parameters right on the dial. The Autosparge, ultimate simplicity for preventing an overflow or running your mash tun dry. And much more, like the modular top-tier brewing stand, conical fermenters, and their Boilermaker brew pots. With more cutting-edge equipment coming soon, keep up with the latest from Blickman at BlickmanEngineering.com and stay on the cutting edge.
Whether I'm making me dry stout or rebuilding me kegs, I head to the heart of dear Dublin for me homebrewing supplies.
You head all the way back to Emerald Isle just for a wee batch of grain or a bit of keg tubing?
No, you moronic waste of liver. Dublin, California. I go to HopTech.
For 30 years, HopTech in Dublin, California has been supplying homebrewers with malt extract, fresh grains, hops, spices and sugars, hop oils and extracts, and much more. HopTech is one of the first homebrew supply shops on the internet and is proud to offer award-winning beer kits, both online and in their store.
Mention the BN Army for a 10% discount off your order.
The store is open every day except Wednesday, or shop online at hoptech.com anytime. HopTech is run by passionate, award-winning brewers who live, love, and travel for beer and bring their experience to the store for you.
If you don't want to visit Dublin, just call toll-free 800-DRY-HOPS or go to hoptech.com.
Visit HopTech today in Dublin, California and at hoptech.com.
Nico, listen, our lawyers said that we had to do this for 1 hour, and after this, we don't have to talk to each other for 3 more months to the next meeting.
Kids, come on, let's get out of here.
I'm supposed to have more lines. I'm the professional. Hey, it's Sully.
And I'm Nico.
And we opened the 21st Amendment 10 years ago at 563 2nd Street in San Francisco, just 2 blocks from Giants Park, to make great beer and have a great time doing it.
That's right, because to us, the 21st Amendment is more than just the right to make beer. It's the right to experiment, to be innovative, and just do things differently. And so now, we're putting our craft beer in cans.
That's right, cans. You can find our world-famous Hell or High Watermelon Wheat Beer and Brew Free or Die IPA in the Northeast, Northwest, parts of the Midwest, and Alaska in cans and on draft. So next time you're at your local neighborhood pub or good beer store, be sure to ask for 21st Amendment in cans.
Because everyone likes it in the can.
Tasty crack cans.
Tasty crack can.
And now, Northern Brewer brings you another installment of The Time Brewers. 3 brewers, 3 different eras, all caught in the same fermento-chronological vortex, traveling through time, righting brewing wrongs, and bringing beery wisdom to where and whenever it may be needed. Journey now with Dr. Jean de Klerk.
Greetings, listeners.
20th century Belgian super brewing scientist.
Please, the yeast and the enzymes do the hard work. I am merely a facilitator.
Icebach.
What?
21st century Norwegian American homebrewer rapper from St. Paul.
Listen. I bust the attenuation maxims and my Yakima magnums make my lager so smooth it's like a laxative. My spit got that static power after I mash for an hour. I got naked ladies in my brew room all covered in hot flowers. I swing a propagation flask like a 5-liter dick. Get your nasty mid-drinking group on ass back to 1026, boo!
And Brother Abelard.
Art thou a witch? Begone!
12th century English monk and perpetuator of brewing superstition.
My holy rod of divine babbling shall maketh any ale to froth by the grace of heaven, and a modicum of bog myrtle hurts not either.
Brought to you by Northern Brewer, your one-stop homebrew supplier throughout the entire fermento chronosphere. The widest selection of quality malt, hops, yeast, and equipment with $7.99 flat rate shipping. Tune in next time for more Time Brewers!
Hilo, what's it feel like?
Take awesome and multiply it by 2.
Yeah!
Spraying live beer radio all over your face.
Can't get any better than this, baby.
It's the Brewing Network.
Back to your hosts, Jamil Zainasheff and John Palmer. Putting the testicles in technical. This is Brew Strong.
All right. You know, doing the show makes me feel very manly.
It does? What are you doing the rest of the week?
Dress up frilly dresses and
taking the girls to ballet,
prancing around the house.
Yeah.
It's all this talk about testicles and things.
Yeah.
Very manly.
I gotta say, I've never heard John Palmer's name pronounced so well than
I know.
that guy.
Yeah.
Our friend Art.
I was thinking exactly the same thing.
The ways Palmer. It really gets that L in there.
Yeah. That dude's fantastic.
Yeah.
Whenever I say my name, no one understands what I say.
Because it's like, you're like, what?
I always have to spell it for people. It's sad.
You should hire Art. You could just bring Art with you everywhere you go.
Right. That'd be good.
Yeah. All right, we have time for a couple more questions. Let's go to the phones. It looks like I have a caller on here, too. Caller, you're on Brew Strong. Who are we talking to?
Hey, it's Alonzo again. Is it cool if I call once more?
Yeah, what do you got?
No, one time per show, sorry.
Make it quick.
It's another top cropping question. By the way, the weird flavor in Kim's beer, it was Andy, just so you guys know.
Probably so. It's a pretty good analysis.
It's a weird flavor in her life is Andy.
Yeah. All right, what do you got?
All right. The other top cropping question I had, so I have kind of a difficult time getting the yeast from the top of the beer. I use a method very similar to what's mentioned in Jamil and Chris's new book, but so I can't really get enough into my collection vessels, so what I'll sometimes do is put in some CO2 to apply pressure to my better bottle. I don't do this to glass. I only use better bottles.
Yeah, that's
and
fine.
It will bring... Yeah, absolutely. Don't apply pressure to glass. What it'll do is bring up a liter or two of fermenting beer, and I'm just wondering what you think of doing that as kind of a best-case scenario. Is what I can do versus maybe just bottom cropping, just waiting until the whole thing is done. Because what I wind up doing is just letting the whole thing ferment because all the yeast is in suspension with all of that beer, and then I just put it in the fridge and then... pitch it from there. So it's almost like bottom cropping at that point.
Yeah, I'm super lazy, so I bottom crop because I don't have time to do this other stuff and pay attention and all that difficult stuff. So, but I'm surprised you're getting a liter or two of beer. You will get some liquid because liquid's bound up in that yeast that's up on the top. But are you getting a nice, large, crop, of yeast up there? Are you getting 4 inches of yeast up top, or is it just like a thin layer before you start top cropping?
It's a pretty thin layer. It's not like this huge clump of yeast on top. I guess you would say it's a pretty thin layer. Like I'll put the collection. I use a stainless steel tube, and then it goes right on the top, and I'm getting a whole bunch of wort with that as I apply the pressure.
Well,
to suck it up.
what yeast is this?
The yeast, it was 001 Cal-Ale.
Yeah, 001's not a great top cropper in the homebrew size. Certain beers will do better on that, so that's part of the problem. So it really depends on the yeast as well. If you're using something that really forms a giant head like this West Yorkshire yeast I get from White Yeast, that'll form a giant layer of yeast on top of beer, and then you can almost rack the beer out from under it, and that yeast will still be stuck there at the top. I mean, the beer will be done fermenting, and the yeast is still there. So, some yeasts, very great top croppers, and some not so good. And it depends also on the fermentation vessel. So, 001, that's a tough one to top crop. So you are going to get some beer. If you do get some beer, it's not a big deal. But I'm lazy. 001, I just recover the entire big pile from the bottom.
All right, thanks for the call, Alonzo. And we got time for one more question. I'll squeeze it in here. I thought it was a good question that came into the Brew Strong at thebrewingnetwork.com. If you have questions to send, Danny or Kolsch Brewer in the forum wrote in, I was wondering if you could discuss whether hop additions, bittering flavor, and or aroma should be adjusted based on pellet type, i.e. T45 versus T90. From what I understand, he says, one type is basically a shredded hop cone, while the other removes many of the plant parts and concentrates the lupulin. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I thought this was an excellent question. Mm-hmm. And you gave me the opportunity to skip it until I actually knew something about this.
Yeah, I did.
But, just to show that I really don't know.
Everything.
I imagine that it does make some sort of a difference. Everything makes a difference. The tiniest little things in brewing actually do make a difference. But sometimes the difference is so minor it really doesn't matter. I would not be too concerned about that, but I imagine in a side-by-side test you should be able. Maybe there's something that would be very subtly different between the two. What do you say, John?
I think, go off the alpha percentage on the bag, and the T90.
Bittering wise, probably nothing. But flavor and aroma and all that.
No, you're gonna get less tannin, hop tannins in the T90 pellets versus the T45.
Right.
And hop tannins do contribute some bitterness character to the beer.
Mm-hmm.
But I would think it'd be a fairly subtle loss. I mean, I don't think you're going to miss it.
Mm-hmm. And I guess it's all to scale. But I would think that the amount of hops we use in a homebrew, we wouldn't notice the difference, but maybe we would notice at a Firestone Walker if he used T45 versus T90. Again, I suppose it's all to scale, but it just seems to me that the difference would be so minimal that even with a side-by-side, I don't think I would taste it.
Right. The reason that a brewer will choose one over the other is really more based off of cost and convenience than anything else.
Right.
In the commercial field of things.
This would be a good question the next time we have Brynelson in, though, who used to be the hop chemist. This would be a great one to keep around for him.
That is a perfect question for him.
It would make me sound real smart if I asked it saying it was mine.
Get him on the phone right now.
Just call him now.
Call him up.
Yeah.
Brynelson.
Yeah. Didn't you go to hop school up in Oregon once?
Yes, I did.
And they didn't talk about this?
No, they didn't.
Not while you were paying attention.
Brynelson was there, though.
Yeah.
Did I tell you I'm gay for Brynelson? If any man could turn me gay, it's Matt Brynelson.
Most beer lovers are, I think.
Oh, yeah.
All right, that's all the questions we have time for today, guys.
All right, so another great show of Brew Strong and our Q&A sessions. If you like the show, if you want to see it keep going, make sure you contact our sponsors, Blickman Engineering, especially. Send them an email, tell them, hey, thanks for sponsoring the show. We got a new sponsor been helping us out, Grain and Grape in Melbourne, Australia. Great guys, John Preston there. You gotta send them an email at least, telling them, hey, thanks for sponsoring the show. It makes a difference. Also, you can help too. Go to the Brewing Network store. Those items there. A lot of that goes to the bottom line. Get yourself a shirt, Brew Strong shirt. I'm wearing one right now, and I love them. Good quality shirts, and it really helps support the show. Same thing for the books, the glasses, all that stuff. You're getting quality merchandise, and a few of the bucks goes to keep this programming on the air. So jump in there, and don't be afraid to buy gifts for your wife and kids. It's quality stuff, and they'll appreciate it. Ages from 6 months to 100 years old, Brewing Network gear is absolutely appropriate. And don't forget, just keep in mind that this sage piece of advice: Daddy likes to make a little racket in the sack. Brew Strong.
Brew Strong, everybody.